The National Constitution Center is a very special place. It's the only institution in America that has a charter from Congress to disseminate information about the US Constitution on a nonpartisan basis. That means we bring together all sides in the constitutional debates that transfix America to debate not political issues, but constitutional issues so that you, the people, can make up your own mind. Today is a very exciting day for me because I have the chance to share with you our President George H.W. Bush gallery, which displays rare copies of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. We're now one of the only places in America, aside from the National Archives, where you can see rare copies of these three priceless charters of freedom in one place. And what we've tried to do in this gallery is tell a story. It's a story of the evolution of rights, and in particular, how the rights that were promised in the Declaration of Independence are implicit in the Constitution and were finally codified in the Bill of Rights. So underlying each of the three documents is a philosophy, and it's a philosophy of rights, and in particular of natural rights. What was a natural right? The framers disagreed about many things, but they agreed that all men and women have certain unalienable, inherent, and fundamental rights. These rights inhere in us by virtue of the fact that we're human. They come from God or nature, not from government. And the framers believed that these rights could be discerned by the mind of man, by reason. And they talked often about the same kinds of rights as being natural and unalienable. They talked about the right to worship God according to the dictates of conscience. They talked about the rights of enjoying life and liberty and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. And in particular, and in some ways most importantly of all, they talked about the unalienable right of individuals to alter and abolish government whenever it becomes destructive of these ends. So this is the George W. Bush Bill of Rights Gallery, and the first document that we see as we come in here is a rare copy of the Declaration of Independence. This is the one that was lent to us by David Rubenstein, and this is really a remarkable story about how this document came to pass. The copy of the Declaration that most people think about is in the National Archives. That was the one that the framers famously signed, that John Hancock apocryphally but vividly said, "I'm going to sign so big that King George can read it without his spectacles," and that's Hancock's big signature. But the thing about the document that's now in the National Archives is that even by the 1820s, it was becoming faded. It was really beat up when Dolly Madison and others rolled it up to save it during the War of 1812. And President John Quincy Adams became concerned that the original was going to fade so much that it couldn't be read. So he commissioned in 1820 an engraver called Stone to make a perfect copy of the Declaration that would look even more like the real thing than any other print. There was only one problem. Stone came up with, by some accounts, a rather cutting-edge copying technique that involved taking a wet cloth which was soaked with acid and lifting half of the ink off of the original Declaration and then putting it on a copper plate that was made to make this copy. So the result of all this is that the original Declaration is in even worse shape than the one that it originally was, but this spectacular copy is pristine and looks even more like the copy that the framers signed in 1776 than the one that's in the archives. So bad news for the original Declaration, good news for those of us who are lucky enough to have copies of this precious Stone Declaration. 200 copies were originally made and sent out to important institutions and state governments and so forth, and public officials. About 27 or so of these copies survive, and this is one of them. Our slogan here is visit, learn, debate. Visit the Constitution Center, see the documents, learn about their historic and contemporary relevance, and most important of all, debate their meaning, because there are good arguments on all sides of the constitutional arguments that transfix America. If someone tells you there's a clear answer, reach for your wallet, because there's not, but you've got a lot of learning to do. You've got to familiarize yourself with the text and history and the Supreme Court cases, and then you can engage in these debates and make up your own mind.